So
She's in the room.
YouTube is
Okay.
coming up.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here, for joining us. Lori and Sharon will be here very shortly. And today is the 277th day of the year, and Lesson 277 says, "Let me not bind your son with laws I made." And I think he's talking about the laws of specialness, the laws of you or me, us or them, good and bad, right and wrong, differences. Ken Wapnick's commentary on all of this. The laws to which Jesus refers are the body's laws of specialness, particularly the laws of one or the other. Though each is on opposite sides of the bars, both are confined by the prison of sin. So as long as I'm seeing differences of any kind, I'm in the prison that the ego made for me, and I am divided. I am not whole. I see myself on the other side. Good morning, Sharon. And this morning, I just want to say that I feel so grateful. I have so much gratitude. It came to me earlier this morning, something like even around 4 a.m. You might say, "What are you doing up 4 a.m?" Well, I went to bed early, and I realized I was thinking about something that happened to me literally 54 years ago. I'm saying to myself, "What are you thinking about this thing that happened to you 54 years ago at 4 o'clock in the morning?" And actually, it was something that happened in my life that I was actually ashamed of. I had done something wrong, and I had obviously held on to this guilt my entire life, because why else would I be thinking about it at 4 a.m? But it doesn't matter. It was that guilt. It was just the idea of guilt. So I almost dismissed it as the ego likes to dismiss all such things. And they said, wait a minute, there must be a purpose for me to be looking at this right now. It didn't happen by accident. Why don't I look a little bit deeper at what brought this up? So, as Ken Rapnick would remind us over and over, don't look at it the way you set it up. Look at it the way it is. And all of a sudden, it came to me. I did want that to happen exactly the way it is. I miscreated it, or created it, or I made it all up so that I could be here talking about it. It seems like all the things in our life, if your purpose is truth, is to actually do something that will put you further on this path that will lead you to where you are right now. If, as a matter of fact, you want to say, well, that happened and won't happen again, and not look at it, you think that the way you set it up is the way it actually happened. No, I wanted it to happen. That's no different than about a month or so ago, we were talking about the idea that I had told a story about my life for, 80 something years. And yet everything that happened in my life happened because I wanted it to happen, so I could be here now and look at it, smile. And it's in my gentle laughter that it gets healed. So with that, I'm going to just turn this mic on over to you. Well, Lori, Sharon, whoever, it's your mic.
Sharon, go ahead.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Lord. Good morning. I have relatives here. My sister-in-law is here and her boyfriend, and she's 80 and he is going to be 88. Her beloved husband died about 8 years ago from Lewy body, and she's amazing. I mean, we celebrated her 80th birthday, and we went. She learned how to ballroom dance at 80 years old. She drove here at 80 years old, And she's absolutely gorgeous inside and out. I just love her, and her new boyfriend is wonderful. And I'm just having a great time. I couldn't come Tuesday night, Doug, but I did listen to your sharing, and I loved it as usual. It's funny, we say we wanted it all. Well, we all wanted it all, or the dream wouldn't have taken place. It's not a personal dream, it's impersonal. This is impersonal consciousness. When we get beyond the body and we realize it's just this, the concepts keep us in concept. And the mind has the mind wants very much to not go away. We all know that. So then it'll bring up everything that you think you might have. And, when Doug just shared, that was something that he felt that he needed to know. But what I'm doing now is I'm just not paying attention to this crazy, insane voice. I mean, it is insane. And I feel like I got up today at 4 a.m. My sleep has been like irregular, and I used to have a whole story. Oh, I didn't sleep. I feel fine right now. I don't feel tired. And if I am tired, so what? But we are not in charge of when we sleep, how we sleep. I mean, they give you directions, go out in the sunlight. And for one, it might work, but for another, it might not. And this is what we call duality. You see, even as teachers, the great teachers that are in this world right now, they can only take us so far because, my favorite lesson, I think, in the course is I feel the love of God within me now. This is a lesson that truly is telling us to give it all up. Because what I was seeing in my mind was I went to 2 other teachers for a long time. No, actually 3 I listened to. Something in me was getting angry. And I thought, oh, that's the ego. But it really wasn't. It was the pull of life saying, you don't need this anymore. Because it's not a direct experience. The direct experience comes from within. However, those teachers were also within. Because there's nobody without. What's within is within. What's without is without, but it's all one thing. I used to think that we would go inside and meditate inward, and I didn't want to go inward. You know how the Course says that we're terrified, but there's nothing really there. Okay, we are truly an appearance of consciousness, that we never left God. And my mind used to beat me up a lot when it would compare me to teachers. Well, you'll never get this and you'll never get that. And I pretty much felt like I felt when I was a child, because I did have a very, very difficult, when I was born, I had a brain injury, and it wasn't really diagnosed till I was older, but I was challenged. Now, this character didn't do any of it because there's no character, right? This is just the being and the story that it's telling about Sharon. So I want to read from text chapter 13. There is a light that this world cannot give, yet you can give it as it was given you. And as you give it, it shines forth to call you from the world and follow it. For this light will attract you as nothing in this world can do. And you will lay aside the world and find another. And truly, when I started to, my consciousness probably arose I think it was in 2021, I had a complete shift where I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, and that seemed to fall away. And, why I don't like to really say all this is because ego mind will say, well, if that fell away, I should do what Sharon did. And that's not possible because this is all in my script, in my talking. And I so wish that teachers would just say that. Take what you like and leave the rest, because I feel like it does promote more suffering when any teacher, even in school, anywhere, expects you to do what they do, because we are all coming from a different filter. But what the Course says is hold on to nothing. And concepts is all we're playing with. We are one big concept here in this world. But look at life. This is life talking. This is not the character. Life is actually doing this magnificent symphony, and it's gorgeous when you see it from the eyes of a higher consciousness. I still have ego in me, of course. It's still there, and actually it's screaming more now. but I watched myself at 4 o'clock in the morning get up, and the mind was talking about it. And I said, no, I'm fine. I'm fine. Because the thing about the egoic mind is it doesn't know what you are. It doesn't know who you are, and it doesn't care. And I remember when I first started the path with Marianne Williamson, I was so thrilled with when I met her, because I didn't really understand, and I wasn't going to just go to synagogue and say, well, I believe in God. That just wasn't working for me when I ended up in the course community. And she was saying, the ego's not your friend, and it's not. And I think the addiction to the ego is what was going on. There's nothing to get. These are all concepts. We can all talk about what the Course says, but the Course is the finger pointing to the moon, but it's not the moon. The moon's right here, right now. It's just this. And that's all I have. Over to you, Lori.
Thanks, Sharon. Dove, you mentioned that we're on lesson 277. My list says we're on 278, but I'm really glad you brought up 277, because I like the idea of we're not under the, let me not bind your son with laws I made. I like that. And I really appreciate what you were saying, Dove, about looking at that guilt that came up in the middle of the night. And that's a good example of the fine line between spiritual bypassing and looking at what's going on. Because the ego can make us go over and over and over and over things a zillion times. But in this case, you were looking at it in a different way. You weren't just rehashing the past. You were actually eradicating the whole idea of guilt, that belief in guilt. And I'm going through something similar where I've been asking for a number of years, let me be done with this belief in death. And so there's this part of me that, part of the ego self, I should say, that no longer, the idea of death has been loosened quite a bit. And yet I find that it pops up all over the place. And when we look at things like lesson 163, there is no death, the Son of God is free. It talks about the idea of death takes many forms. Even a sigh of weariness is death. Anger, sadness, all of that is death. So, and death is the central dream in which all dreams occur. So I really liked what you had to say, Sharon, about just remember, we are consciousness. It's not personal. These dreams are not personal. And so anyway, I just really appreciate what you were saying, Dove, about looking at, I made that up. I wanted that to happen exactly as it was. And that was so important for you to take that 100% responsibility. And that's what I feel like I'm doing as well. It's like, I'm the one making up this idea of death, and I've got to stop it. I've got to stop it. And it feels like that hold of that idea of death, the laws that I made, which is the central law in this world. The central law in this world is death. Duality is death. We have birth and death. That is the basic primary dual idea in this world. Something is born and then it dies. That's everything in this world. And another fundamental primary duality is male and female. So everything is male or female, and you have the opposite poles of a battery, the positive and the negative. We have the sun and the moon. Those are just primary basic separation devices. And so when we believe in anything in this world, we're believing in death. So I'm just turning that over, because from the ego standpoint, I cannot logic my way through this. All I can do is take 100% responsibility that I'm the one who made up the idea of death. And as some of you may know, one of the most important people in my life died, quote unquote, just recently. And so it's really been on my mind strongly. And the other thing is, when I get into a new relationship, when I start getting very attached, which is ego, then I'm worried that my partner's going to die. So I've got two of my main triggers right here, right now. But it's my responsibility to no longer choose the idea of death. And when that comes up, I need to just go, no, sorry, that's an ego idea, and not believe it, because it's very easy for me to just slide right into, oh crap, I'm getting older. Everyone around me is dying now, because now all my friends are starting to die. I just had another person from my interfaith center just die suddenly. I mean, she was old. She was 83, but sorry, Dove. But she was older. But she just went into rehab for a broken ankle, and then she just died. It was like, whoa! Everyone in the whole place was like, whoa, wait a minute. She was so vibrant. What happened? But there's that slamming you upside the head, and that shakes me. And I keep trying to find some footing in this world, but that's the basic error. There is no footing in this world. There cannot possibly be. So I have a client who is working very, very diligently on letting go of the ego. And his whole life, he has had trauma after trauma after trauma. And he feels like he can't get out from under it. But he's also a very dedicated course student. So he texted me this morning and said, we had a really good session last night in which he felt Jesus's presence, and he felt, this is all mind. I don't have to live like this. And then bam, this morning he wakes up and it feels horrible again. And I wrote him back and said, that's because he said, why would love make me suffer? And I said, love is not making you suffer. You are love choosing the belief in suffering. You are choosing the belief that you are this separate person. So that gets back to what you said, Dove, of I wanted it to happen that way. Obviously, I want to believe in death. I want all this pathos. I want all this, oh my God, look what happened. All this drama, all this sadness, because I used to say that despair was my middle name my whole life. Despair, melancholy, depression, grief. And with the ego dream character, yes, that has been there the whole life, but I don't want that anymore. And that's not who I am. And so the onus is on me to choose again. That's not what I choose. I choose life. I choose truth. I choose only love. And this morning when I got up and did the rules for decision, what kind of day do I want to have? I said, I want this belief in the separate identity who totally believes in death and is scared of all my friends dying, not my own death, because there is no death. But I don't like it when I hear that someone has died. It's a shock to my system, and I miss them. I'm happy for them. I'm not worried about them at all. It's sad for me. And that is what I want gone. That sense of being controlled by that, just like my client felt controlled by this suffering of the trauma. And it's my responsibility, taking 100% responsibility for that. Okay, I'm turning it over to you, Sharon.
I think it's my turn, but that's okay.
It is your
No,
turn.
it's your mic, Dove, and then it's mine. So go ahead,
Okay.
take it.
All right.
Sorry about that, Dove.
So thank you so much, Laurie and Sharon. I could tell that you were listening carefully as I was sharing the first time, because you both picked up on how basically when we put ourselves at cause, of course, we wanted it to happen this way. And by the way, I did put up, you're so right, Laurie, it's lesson 278 today. And by the way, 77 and 78 go together because they are both talking about the laws of specialness in which I bind myself up and I bind my brother up. And both of them are saying, you can undo this. So today's lesson is, if I'm bound, my father is not free. So I'm not only binding myself, but I'm saying that my father did this to me. So he's part of the idea that things are not going the way I want. But actually it's the exact opposite. It is going exactly the way I want. And I realized that today I was out walking the dog, and it came to me, not only are we dreaming, But this is the dream of atonement. The dream of atonement is I want to remember the truth. You know, another word for God is truth. So, and that's how I got on this path. I've told the story a number of times, but in my spiritual awakening, when I was 32, I saw myself in a garden with a T-shirt that said "Love the Truth," and that actually became my path. Now the truth is, in a world that appears real but is really a dream, the truth is I am doing this to myself. I'm the dreamer of the dream. And when our Father gave us the gift, in the instant that we thought we were separate and different and apart and special, and the gift was the plan for the atonement, and all we had to do is to accept the atonement. So to accept the atonement is simply to realize that what I think happened never happened. That's exactly why Ken would say, you know, don't look at it the way you set it up. In other words, the way the ego set it up, so that you think that you're guilty and you have to live in pain. And as you're saying about your friend Laurie, that you suffer. There's no reason to suffer when you realize that you wanted it this way. And I'm looking at my life. I would not be here speaking on this mic, sharing with you, if everything in my life didn't happen exactly the way it happened, including something that happened 54 years ago, which at that time, I wish it never happened, but it did happen. But wait a minute, what do you mean I wish it never happened, but it did happen? It's perfect that it happened, because that's why I'm here. It couldn't have happened any other way. It happened perfectly. It's exactly like my favorite paragraph in the course, lesson 135, paragraph 18. What can you not accept if you knew that everything that happens, all events, past, present, and even to come, is gently planned by one whose only purpose is your good? If you hang out with that, you gotta laugh. You simply gotta laugh. And with that, over to you, Sharon.
You know, this is only my experience. I loved what you shared, Dove, and what you shared, Lori. But my experience is that we can't do this wrong. I feel like the process mitigates our guilt, and it gives us an opportunity in this, you know, relative world that we can have like a group and study together. And it's just seems like a higher way of living, right? Because it's, you know, there was so much pain I had in this body, and, you know, and fear too. So wait, is my computer going to go out? I think it is. So wait a minute. I just have to check something. So I'll be right there. Okay, the computer isn't going to go up. Give me a minute. All right, so what I'm going to say basically is that I feel that life is doing it all. I am life. There's no separate self. And what is life? And is synonymous with God. You know, when I was a young girl, I would go to synagogue with my parents, and they would sometimes at the end of, you know, service, they would sing to life, l'chaim. They had so many beautiful songs, but that one song, because they played it at weddings, they played it bar mitzvahs, to life, we are life, we are God consciousness. And so I felt it so deep within me, you know, as a child, and I never understood, but the path was already set for this character. And this was a hard path. This was not easy. I mean, if you knew what happened, the thing that I did get that was easy is a sense of humor, because I was able, not as a child, but as I grew, to laugh a lot, but, you know, sometimes to scream too. You know, it takes the willingness. So I thought, you know, when I got into this process, I had to be willing, but willingness is spirit, right? And resistance is ego. Those are just concepts. So the willingness is already there. I mean, we live here in the willingness because that's all there is. And spirit is just, because the ego takes us on mind takes us on this whole road. And an individual did not create the path, but I, as the I, the one I, the infinite self, made it all up. And little by little, we are now seeing things seemingly out there, like, Sebastian Blakely's new book. He's, I think I'm going to go to that class, but I'm also asking within, because I want to say this, these are all concepts. If we go to another dimension after we die, so what? We are not people. We think that this character is going to go to another dimension. But I think the beautiful words of Sebastian Blakely's channeling is why I want to go. Because even though concepts are not what we are, it enriches me when I just take it in and I take every seeming word as I can feel the love of God within me now. I can feel it. And when you feel that, it's all perfect. Mind's still there saying, but. Mind is there to distract me, to worry me. It's a very good tool, though, and it's necessary, and it's not evil. What it is ignorant. That's all it is. It doesn't know what we are. And it's a computer that we have downloaded, the way I see it. And this is only coming from this mind, from gestation to, well, the script's always written before, but all the way to 7 years old, our story gets made. And this character had a hard story. There was a lot of rejection. There was a lot of unconditional love, but the willingness came in all the time because I was always able. I didn't bite back like my sister did. I just didn't. And you could say I was scared, but there was something there. That was the willingness to just say, I can't yell back because it wasn't healthy. Years later, I did start to yell. And I became a yeller, a rager in my 30s. And it was shocking to me. And I was in therapy at the time. And I said to her, well, you told me I need to get angry. She said, yeah, but I didn't tell you should be like your mother. Because my mother was a rageaholic. And I said, well, okay. So, once again, I thought like, I'm failing. And these are all signposts of suffering and suffering and suffering. I mean, I don't know if somebody died as close to me as your partner did, Laurie, that I would be. I don't know what shape I'd be in because I'm a big crier. I'm highly emotional. And I don't care if I would just sob and sob and sob, because to me, that is love too. Some beings want to go all the way back to God and get out of consciousness. Well, that's not going to happen on their own. That had to be voted in from the beginning. So it's just important for this mind to pay attention to what it's digesting. If it's a directive like that, I did this, and then if you do it, you'll get where I go. And I see this a lot on Facebook. And I love these teachers. They're beautiful, beautiful. But if you do this, I healed and now you can heal. That isn't wrong, but there's a manipulation there. Because if you really read the Course in Miracles, you know that everybody's on their own path. And it's self-study. Now, Dove was brought into this by guidance, I'm quite sure, when he opened this room up years and years ago. And he made it equal. I was just new, and I never felt like in that room, I always felt that I should be there. But that was okay, because when I moved to other places, it wasn't always that way. Because when I was brought completely back to this group, it seemed to me that I learned what I needed to learn elsewhere. And now there's really nothing to learn, and we're just equal love. And that's why the groups that we have are thriving so well. I don't see judgment. I see only magnificent beings that just want to help walk us home. When egoic mind thinks they're superior in this process, that's what happens sometimes when people start waking up. The ego gets in there and it becomes very arrogant. It says, well, I'm awake and you're not. And that is something I had to learn. And these lessons were all about unconditional love. Like if somebody pissed me off, like a teacher, and there was one that really pissed me off, and I realized I have to forgive that because that's a judgment from my mind. I don't really know what my perception would be if I had another mind. See, my perspective is only my perspective. It doesn't belong to anyone else. So, I'm just grateful for this path. But I'm also grateful to be back. I never did leave Dove and Lynn. On Thursdays I was here, but I was still in other places. And what I really feel now is the equality and the sense of oneness that I feel with this group is just magnificent. Now, again, I have to go everywhere and feel that, right? But little by little, I'm chipping away of resistance, little by little. So, if it is God's will that nothing touch his son, this is God's will. So I have to think of, what does my Father want? And today's lesson is all about that. There's nowhere that the Father ends and the Son begins. We are one. We didn't create, but we are part of the creation. So I feel like if I just stay with that, but you're never guilty because there's no wrong. And only guilt will tell us how bad we are. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Lori, and thank you.
Thanks, Sharon. You were talking about how different teachers say different things, and this is how I did it, so you can do it too. And you're right, everyone, it's an individual curriculum in one sense, because we all have our particular dream attachments, and someone can wake up through baseball. You can wake up through playing baseball, or as lesson 28 says, you could gain vision through that table if you saw it clearly without all of the definitions you've put on it. And Dove had put up in the board Ken Wapnick's commentary about these two lessons, 277 and 278, are about binding ourselves and loosing ourselves from the laws which we made, the laws of specialness. And one thing I have found as a common theme about no matter who you are or what your path is, at some point you make a decision, I don't want this anymore. And you make that decision so strongly that nothing else comes in. It's like, I'm done. Whether it's an addiction to alcohol or something in the world, or whether it's being awake, because of course we know that there appears to be a person who can wake up, but that's the illusion. And yet within the illusion, it seems like there's a decision that is made of, I'm done with this illusion. I am done. I'm taking 100% responsibility. I'm not going to do this anymore. And Holy Spirit, make this decision for me, do it for me, or something happens where we shift like that. Like even what Dove was talking about I wanted it this way. Oh my gosh, I did this to myself. And there's that line in the Course that says that salvation, I can't remember it exactly, but one of you probably do. It's like salvation could be said as, I'm just doing this unto myself. That's how simple it is. Oh my gosh, I'm doing this unto myself, and it's me who can change that. And I'm going to turn this back over to Dove.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we're all on the same page here, and thank you so much, Sharon, for sharing. It's like this group was meant to be for sure. If I had stayed in the things I was doing when 54 years ago, we wouldn't have this ACIM gathered group. So you're right. The people that got attracted here and is part of this community, and as you say, is like the perfect community. Somehow it was destined to be, or as in the Hebrew, Beshet, L'chai, to life, L'chaim. It was meant to be. As we're talking about all this, what comes to mind is that line from the Happy Dream, chapter 18, section 5, which I did put. I did put it here, and I put it both in the room, and I'll put it up here again in the chat. Some of your greatest advances you have judged as failures, and some of your deepest retreats you have evaluated as success. So yeah, it seemed like what happened to me 54 years ago was a real failure. And like, why did this ever have to happen to me? But it was really a success because it got me here. Because this is the plan of the atonement. The dream that we're in is the dream of atonement. And that line that you were speaking about, Laurie, is the secret of salvation is I'm doing this to myself. Now, what is it I'm doing to myself? Am I making myself hurt and go through pain and suffering? Or am I paving the way to an awakening? And I say that that's exactly what that line from the Happy Dream says. What you think is a failure is really a success. You're just thinking in terms of the ego and the world. Oh, it shouldn't have happened to me. No, it was perfect that it happened to me. I'm waking up. I'm waking up. Hi, Gloria, and good morning. And with that, I'll just turn this mic back on over to you, Sharon Love.
Hi, Glorian. Let's see who's there. I don't know if Audrey's there right now. Her name is, but I want to say hi, and Dove and Lynn and Delia. And
It's Audrey.
Audrey, I did say Audrey. Yeah, I thought I did anyway. Yeah. Anyway, it's interesting how we're just being moved exactly where we need to be. And, when we make it into drama, when we listen to the wrong mind, we're always going to lose. We're always going to lose because it's built in the system. It's a failed system, completely failed. Because I didn't understand what happened to me years ago. I was shocked because I mean, here I am living with somebody who has another life, just like you see in a movie. And I find out a lot of stuff. And he got crazy, my ex-husband, from the options market. I mean, he would literally lose $1 million in a day. So I was like shocked when I found this out. And then he had a girlfriend too. So it was kind of like, I just had a lot of, and the story unfolded just the way I, as the infinite, would want it. It was very much duality. It had special love and special hate all the time. I gravitated towards love more. I don't know if that's just in my nature. I have 3 sisters. My youngest sister's a lot like me. We just have an empathic, they call it an empath. So I do not feel, I can get crazy and rageful and everything, but I do not like conflict. But the Course in Miracles came in where I had that stroke and I just got in this room and I never left it. And I couldn't even go out with my friends because I had a new group that I was happier than I've ever been. I was living alone and listening. I think I woke up with Dove and then at night I said goodnight because we were in the room sometimes till 11 o'clock, sometimes. And a lot of my friends, because I'm in the STEP program here in Altoona, would say, well, why wouldn't you go out? You can't just, be isolate. That's a big thing in the 12 steps. Don't isolate. But it's not isolating it's not isolating when you are connecting to your brother, when you're getting the truth, when you're getting the truth and you know it and you just keep doing it and you don't know how it's going to end up. But now I do know because I think no matter what, I'll always be safe. I'll always be love. And I'll always be spirit because that is eternal always. And the amount of investment I put on this character was necessary until it isn't, right? So I feel at this point, let's look at our concepts because they are pointers and I can't be on here without a concept. But the most beautiful thing is the silence. And, I love listening to Dove and Suzanne de Kaiser on Fridays because she's very, she just leads, Dove and her just really do a lot of, quiet listening is what I see. Just look, see, notice. Because the ego doesn't want silence. The ego doesn't like silence. And if I think the ego's me, I can't like, silence either. So I just feel at this point that gratitude, the way I walk in gratitude is real now. There's direct experience. There's just a lot of love and forgiveness for myself because I made it up. And I, as that one mind, need to forgive it all. Not just a little bit, but all. And it's radical forgiveness. That's what it really is. But the way I see it is you're going up the ladder, like Ken Wapnick would share. You go a little bit up the ladder and a little bit more and a little bit more, and your mighty companions are always there with you. Over to you, Laura. Laurie?
Sorry
Doug?
about that. Sorry about that. I'm here. Yeah, as you were saying that, thanks for that quote, Dove. The secret of salvation is this: I am doing this unto myself. It made me think about something a friend of mine, Martin Pettit, and some of you may know him.
I know Martin.
Yeah, he's in our Sunday night group. And Martin wrote a book too on A Course in Miracles. And when my first husband died 3 years ago of a brain tumor, it was so shocking because he was this guy who was very strong and very competent and virile and just powerful, mountain climber, mountain bike racer, one of those types of people. And everybody who heard that he died of a brain tumor was like, really? Are you kidding me? Oh my gosh. And in one of my groups where Martin was there, I said, I just don't understand why he died of a brain tumor. I don't get it. What was going on with him? And Martin said lovingly, he goes, I think the better question is, why did you choose to have a husband who, a former husband who died of a brain tumor? And that is something that has basically crossed my mind just a couple times with this situation with Rod, where he had multiple strokes and couldn't speak or move for 6 months. And I've asked the question 1,000 times, like, Rod, like in my mind, Rod, why did you do this? Why did you do this? It scares the hell out of me because this life is painful enough to then have something like that happen, especially when he and I, when we lived together and I was his medical power of attorney, it was like, no, pull the plug on me. This is not happening. And I'm going, well, I'm not your medical power of attorney anymore. I can't pull the plug. So what the heck is going on? But the better question is, why did I choose to have, again, a former partner who seemed to choose to die this way? And I have to take 100% responsibility again. So if we look at lessons 277 and 278, let me not bind your son with laws I made. Here I am binding myself with laws of the world. Like you have a stroke and you're gone. But here we have Sharon talking about the stroke that she had, which brought her into A Course in Miracles ACIM gather room. So is a stroke in itself necessarily bad? And I've been using the strokes that Rod had as really bad, as reinforcement of my belief in death and belief in death in a very gruesome, horrible, long drawn out suffering way. That's mine. And I've got to deal with that. And so I feel really good from this talking this morning to go, okay, here I have something to work with. I chose this. This is exactly what I wanted to have happen. Just like Dove started out our session today of waking up at 4 a.m. with guilt over something that happened 50 some years ago. And I can say it for like right now, my whole life in the last couple of years. And, I'm choosing a life where, I expect I probably will live into my 90s. That's just an intuitive feeling. And I don't really even care. I could go tomorrow. I'd be fine. But the dread, I feel like, oh man, I'm going to live into my 90s and people I know that were in their 90s, all their friends are gone. And I don't want to go through that. And yet, who is the I that's saying that? That's totally the ego. And Dove, you just wrote on the board, we live in a sea of synchronicity within an ocean of love. And I'm very aware I've got to stop this, and only I can change my mind. I'm turning 65 in a couple weeks, and it feels like, oh my God, I'm officially a senior citizen now and officially on Medicare now. And oh, it's just going to be crap from now on, just a hellacious, oh God, I don't want to be old. And so all of this, and it's mine. And I know I've been talking about this lately because it's a lesson right in front of my face. And, but taking 100% responsibility that, well, I want this, and I can't blame the world, and I can't blame God for putting me in this body. And why didn't you take me earlier? Why is love making me suffer? Like my client texted me. It's like, love's not making you suffer. You're choosing it, and I'm choosing this, and I've got to buck up. So turning it back over to you, Dove.
All right. So it sounds like everything happens perfectly, which is pretty much about the only thing I heard clearly that Jesus and the Holy Spirit spoke to me 10 years ago when I was sitting in a hospital room. You are perfectly cared for. And I mean, he tells you this over and over again. And, when you say the words, the secret of salvation is I'm doing this to myself. But what is it that I'm doing to myself? Am I hurting myself? Or am I waking up? Is everything that happening towards my recognition, as you like to always point out, one of your favorite things from lesson, I think it's lesson 188, first paragraph. Enlightenment is a recognition. It's not a change. You're recognizing that the things that you thought were painful and they shouldn't have happened, and I wish it didn't happen. No, it's the exact opposite. It's perfect that it happened, because I'm here to actually look at it and smile and laugh. What could you not accept if you knew that everything that happens, all events, past, present, and even to come, are gently planned by one whose only purpose is your good? And I got to admit, I have a whole new way of thinking of that line that we put in just a few minutes ago, which I think I can, I put in the room. Some of your greatest advances you have judged as failures, and some of your deepest retreats you have evaluated as a success. So when you look at your life, the things that the ego says to you, I wish it didn't happen. No, it was perfect that it happened, because we're in a dream of atonement. And the dream of atonement means that when I finally come to the clearing, I have been in the woods. I'm now in a clearing. I see that everything that ever happened perfectly for my awakening. To remember that I have accepted the atonement. The atonement was over a long time ago. Remember, this world was over a long time ago. Remember. Good morning, Regis. Everyone loves Regis. Turning this mic back on over to you, Sharon Love.
Okay. Hi, Regis. What I was going to say is, when we were talking about us taking responsibility, everything happened perfectly for this mind. If I tell you that I came in the world with a cord around my neck, and the mother that gave birth to me, or my mother gave birth to me, the cord was around my neck, and a little bit of the oxygen actually did, that could be why I had that ADHD, but I don't know, because I have an auto processing too, and that has been affecting a lot of the things that I do now. But here I'm explaining, I wanted all this. I, as the infinite, wanted this. Even that choking, even that disability, because when I turned 40 and I got separated, my ex-husband was in a psychosis, and I didn't realize it. And he had left. He drove, his mind drove him mad. It really drove him mad, because he was an options trader, and it just, nervous system. If you look at it from a relative, anybody could lose their mind with what he was doing, because we put so much love and money. And that's what he was. He was all about money. As I grew up, I grew older. Life puts me together with him. And I was telling Dove about him because I'm an artist and he was an options trader, and they don't seem to go together. I'm also an empath and he's the narcissist, but it's a perfect thing for awakening. It's a perfect play for awakening to have the opposite, because that being that I think is there is helping me to not deny the parts of me that are narcissistic, because you always have everything, even in the ego. There's no separate ego. So if you see something out there, it's really you. So years later, in my 40s, he broke in my house. I had all these things because he was becoming very violent, and he started to push me against the wall and choke me. And my little boy at the time was 11, and my other son was 14. And they called him in the other room because, well, he did, because my ex-husband also beat my 11-year-old. He was really, he has no memory of it, I'm quite sure. But watch this movie. That cord was around my neck and he choked me. Do you see the patterns of energy that just took place by the writer of the story, the author? It's so perfect. But people look at my life as being so hard. Well, I just, in this world, seeming world, I got lucky because I ended up in this. And it wasn't a me that did this. It's I that did this. I as the infinite. I as life. Over to you, Laura.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. Wow. I love that, when we see these patterns of the choking at the beginning and then the choking later on. And, that's interesting, too, because the cord was wrapped around my neck, too. And later on, like when I was 17, 18, my mom, there was a horrible, horrible divorce in our family. And my mom went crazy and she choked me and she told me she was going to kill me. And then she said, I brought you into this world and I can take you out. And I'm noticing that I don't think I've ever said that on this radio show about that incident. And that's because it's just completely resolved. It's a story that, oh yeah, that's right. That's a story that happened a long time ago. And I don't even think about it anymore. It's not in my consciousness as important at all. But for a long time it was, until I worked it through and completely forgave it, because I could see the classic Freudian stuff. It was really funny. Speaking of the scripts that we write, me being in the psychology field, anything that's Freudian or that is interesting to me. And it was just so classic. My mom actually said to me at this time when she was divorcing my dad, and I was alone in the house, and she had moved out and then was in with her new boyfriend, which became her husband. And anyway, she comes back in and she starts actually fighting me on the floor. And there was not prior violence in our home, but she said to me, she goes, you always wanted your dad. Now you can have him. I'm going, wow, is that classic Freudian or what? So she's choking me, killing me. Well, on my wall now in my current bedroom, I have a picture of my grandparents' wedding. Actually, it's not even their wedding. It's my great-grandparents' wedding. And the reason I have the picture is because it's classic Freudian. I always saw this picture in my grandparents' house and always thought that it was my grandma and grandpa. Well, then I looked closely and realized, oh no, it couldn't be them because they got married in the 40s. And this picture is from the turn of the century, the clothing. And what it is it looks exactly like my grandma and grandpa. And I realized my grandma looked like her mom, and she married a man who looked just like her dad. And so I have this picture on my wall, and I just think it's funny. And what is also really interesting about all this is that it's just a story. It's a story to understand this world, but you can throw all the Freudian stuff out and say it's no big deal. It just happens to be the story that I've made sense of this life for, but actually, ultimately, these lives make no sense at all. if we look at the review of lesson 3, I do not understand anything I see. The review says, because it's not understandable, because all this ego stuff is nuts. And so people who are not psychologically oriented might not have any of those stories like that in their lives because they don't need them, because that's not the way they're awakening. And as you both have been saying, it's perfect. I love what you said, Dove, that what could you not accept because it was perfect, because it led you to the path of awakening. That's what makes it perfect. And I've still been carrying this grievance about Rod's strokes. Like, that was not perfect, and that was bad, and that shouldn't have happened. And if I was in control, and if I had the power of attorney, that would not have happened. We would have stopped this suffering months earlier. And so I'm still carrying this grievance, and that is my responsibility. So back to you, Dove.
All right. Yes, I think it's all summed up in that quote that I made many years ago, and Maureen made a picture for me that I put up every now and then, which I think I'll put it up on the Open Mind on Facebook a little bit later. But basically it says we live in a sea of synchronicity. So everything that happens perfectly. That's what synchronicity is. You know, I used to think when I first heard of the word synchronicity, I said, my God, if something can happen perfectly and it happened maybe once or twice, say a year, or once or twice a month, that would be wonderful. And then as I got into the Course in Miracles and I went deeper and deeper, I realized that everything that happens, and that's why we have as a saying on the menu bar at the top of ACIM Gather, this saying from chapter 8, section 3, every encounter is a holy encounter. As you see this person, you're going to see yourself. As you treat this person, you're going to treat yourself. And as you think of them, you're going to think of yourself. Leave no one without giving them salvation. Now, what is salvation? That they were the perfect person in your life at that particular time for you to learn that everything is happening perfectly, literally. And we sometimes say, no, that person should not be in my life. That's the ego. The greatest thing that is given to us is to discernment between how the ego speaks to us, like it shouldn't have happened, I wish it didn't happen, to the discernment between the ego and spirit looks at everything, smiles, and sees that everything is happening perfectly because nothing is happening. Which gets right back to lesson number 1. Nothing I see here means anything. Why should I make a big deal out of nothing? And with that, I see our time is up. Thank you so much, Sharon and Laurie, for being my sharing partners on this Thursday morning, as usual. And I also got to see it streaming live on YouTube. That's really amazing. You're watching yourself streaming on YouTube. And I thank Lynn for all that you do to make all of this possible. And I see Regis in the room. We're about to turn this mic on over to Regis Reeves, reminding everyone that tonight, yes, Thursday night on ACIM Gather Zoom, we go into a deep dive into the manual for teachers where we just get more of this stuff. What a wonderful place to be. ACIM Gather for A Course in Miracles. Love you all. Turning this mic on over to you.